International Mandela Effect Conference 2020 Day 5. We are so very excited to have every last one of you here with us. We appreciate you guys so much for hanging with us all week. It's been incredible, let me tell you. Before we get started, we got a couple things we need to go over, a couple legalities, really simple stuff. If I can go ahead and have my tech team throw the disclaimer onto the screen, please. Thank you. Tech team, you guys are amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, the content you are about to watch is meant for thought and consideration only. Please be respectful of each other and opinions shared. This is a safe space to express thoughts, ideas, and information. The views and opinions expressed by the individuals in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of the speakers or the IMEC organization or affiliates. In other words, just because someone is affiliated with any kind of organization outside of ours gives us no affiliation with them whatsoever. We are not government affiliated. We are not affiliated with any Life Matter movements or any other organizations of the type. We are a 501c. We are a non-for-profit organization for the Mandela Effect community. So anything you hear is only that of the speaker that has said it. From our next presenter and our first presenter of day 5 of IMEC week, ladies and I also hope you guys enjoyed the ladies' night yesterday. I know I enjoyed that chat so much. Maybe we can get more of that for the next time we do this. All right. Maybe we can do a guys and girls chat. How would you guys like that? All guys then all girls, or all girls then all guys? We'll see how we can work that out. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to the stage next is Eva Nye. She's been studying the Mandela Effect for almost 4 years and is the host of the popular YouTube channel Once Upon a Timeline. And it is, if you guys have not checked this channel out yet, like I said, I spent hours in there last night and lost a lot of sleep, so that tells you how good it is. In addition, she is a co-moderator for a very large Mandela Effect social media board named Retcon. And in her off hours, she's also a successful entrepreneur and business leader. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Eva Nye.
Hi, my name is Eva, and I am best known for my Mandela Effect YouTube channel known as Once Upon a Timeline. I am also co-moderator of a Mandela Effect talk group called Retcon that exists on Reddit. Today I'm going to talk about some of the more exciting Mandela Effect phenomena and make some predictions about what those may mean for our future. So let's get started. So first I'm going to start off with some of the atmospheric and light phenomena. Now there's been many changes here, so I'm just going to go over a few of the more interesting ones. This one's called light pillars, and it is supposedly due to ice crystals being aligned by the electromagnetic fields and reflecting light in certain ways. So in this case, it's supposed to be reflecting light that is coming from the ground here. I just saw this one a few years ago, and the pictures of it have gotten brighter and brighter, so it's basically strengthening. I do expect that we'll see more and more light phenomena with rainbows and colors. That's definitely seems to be a very strong trend that we've been heading towards. Here's another example, many new kinds of rainbow. This one's called horizontal rainbow, and this one's fairly new. It's like a huge rainbow that basically covers the entire horizon. We've seen other things like upside down rainbows, different colors rainbows, fog rainbows. The timeline definitely likes its colors. All right, so now there's been some interesting changes in fire and other kinds of physics things. This one's a little older in that I first heard of the fire whirls maybe like 15 years ago, so it's been very slow growing. And I would just talk about a little strange circular rotational vortices that you might see in a fire and how strange it was. But in recent years, it has really kicked up a notch or two. So now there's even the smaller fires can get these ridiculous fire tornadoes. Now, when this first came out, it was just described as only happening in very strong, powerful, unusually large fires like firestorms in Australia or California. But the last year, I've seen it even in just smaller, little, quiet-looking fires, little grass fires. So, yeah, fire tornadoes definitely a new thing. Another example of the rainbow phenomena. I see this particular one quite a bit in real life, unlike some of the other ones where I'm just looking at it on the internet. But I look up quite regularly and I see something like this coming from the moon and the clouds above. And that started several years ago. And it's very common where I'm at. So I definitely didn't have it most of my life, just the last few years. So again, more colorful rainbow type things. I think we're going to just keep seeing more and more of those. Here's another example. This one is sun dogs. There's other words for it. Now, when it first came out, it was just like a ring around the sun. Again, it's supposed to be caused by ice crystals that have been lined via electromagnetic fields. And it was just a circle. And I wondered why they called it a sun dog. And I'm actually still not sure why it's going to have that nickname or has that nickname. One would imagine that it'll make sense eventually. So first it was the ring, and then we started to see images of like extra little sun reflections here. So it looked like there was 3 suns, and then the one on the top, and then more and more and more of these. So I don't know how far this is going to go, but it's getting very geometric. So also, it didn't used to have all the rainbow pattern on it. It used to be just white, but now you're starting to see the rainbows again. So again, more and more rainbows, definitely a very strong pattern. All right, so now I've also seen a lot of changes in the lightning. We have colored lightning. The lightning is bigger, it lasts longer. It doesn't just strike, it kind of pulses. There's different thicknesses in the same strike. And this is another kind of an older Mandela effect where we now have a location where it's lightning strikes almost continuously every day, and it's called Catatumbo. And a very striking area. Never had that in my old timeline. All right, so now to some of there's been many changes in the way snow and frost and ice operate. This is just one example. This is a frost flower. So basically frost on the ground grows into these shapes under certain conditions, and they look like flowers. So very beautiful looking. So this is just ice supposedly created by nature. I have not seen these. I don't live in a very icy area, but maybe I haven't seen them in real life, but maybe some of you have. Here is something that you might actually see in your own freezer now. So supposedly, under the right conditions, if you make ice cubes, they will form these spikes. So I've never seen that before. I don't do a lot of ice cubes either, so can't really chime in on that one. That one showed up a few years ago also. Yeah. Okay, so I talked earlier about Arctica. Some of us remember Arctica as being a continent in the north. It was 7 continents for me. It was North America, South America, Arctica and Antarctica, Africa, and Eurasia and Australia. Those were the 7 countries. So now, or continents. So now what we have is that Europe and Asia are separate continents. So it's kind of a weird choice, but it makes it so that there's still 7 continents, since Arctica is now gone and it's just floating ice and has no land, and submarines can go underneath it. And it used to have high cliffs of ice too. Now it's just flat. It's very weird for me to look at. Okay, so how did it disappear? Well, I wasn't watching at the time, but now I've been watching Greenland, and I'm starting to see how it might work. So supposedly this is Greenland here if there's no ice. And I'd heard a little bit of rumors a few years ago. Oh, we think there's a big canyon under Greenland. Well, this is more than a big canyon. This is like 25% of Greenland being underwater. So supposedly currently, if there's no ice, then Greenland's whole center is underwater. So I'm wondering if something like that is what happened with Arctica, is that under the ice, the land just kind of got eaten away, disappeared. And now we're seeing it with Greenland. And it's not just with Greenland. So this is Antarctica, supposedly what it looks like without ice. So large areas of Antarctica are actually underwater, and they are not. They are not. It's not a solid chunk of land. It's about half gone, I would say. So they're calling Antarctica, of all things, they're calling it an archipelago with lots of islands, and they're calling it a desert, if you can believe that. They're saying that it's a desert because there is very little snow or precipitation fall whatsoever. Now, that's not how I remember it. What I remember for both the North and South Pole is that the glaciers were fed by snowfall. Heavy snowfall would fall over the glaciers and get packed down by gravity and more snow on the top until it got crushed into ice, and that would be what fed the glaciers. So the glaciers might move slowly downhill into the ocean, but they would be fed on top by new snowfall. But that storyline is apparently quite gone because in this timeline, there's very little snowfall there. In fact, I'm not even sure what keeps the glaciers there if they're not getting fed from the top. So Antarctica, there's a lot going on in Antarctica other than the conspiracy theories. It's also getting quite green. First, there was some dirt areas, and that was in the storyline with the desert hypothesis or statements that they make. On just the last few weeks, I'm seeing that they're now saying that there's grasslands and these moss lands. So that's surprising to me because it's supposed to be a desert, and yet there's enough moisture to feed these mosses. But mosses are a lot tougher in the current timeline. Another change for me is that mosses used to die when it got dry, but now they just go into suspended hibernation and wait for the rains to come back, and then they spring back to life. So anyway, so many changes. I could just go on and on, but we will move on to the next thing here. Okay, so now let's move on to some of the weird changes that I'm seeing with not the entire land masses, but just specific smaller areas. And this is a huge one for me. It's the blue lava, believe it or not. There's like lava that comes out blue, supposedly from sulfur that's burning off of the lava. So theoretically or supposedly the lava is still red underneath, but the sulfur burning makes it look bright blue. So this one is one of the first Mandela effects I saw 4 years ago. And at the time that I learned of it, people said it can't be a Mandela effect because it's new. And the storyline at that time was that it was only known about for 2 years. It had just started spewing this blue lava 2 years earlier, and it wasn't well known. And the volcano is called Kawa Eden. So it was only 2 years old. So everybody's like, oh, you're just learning about it because it's new. So this is one pattern that I see very strongly with Mandela effects, is that something starts off as new and can't be a Mandela effect. And then if you watch it, it actually moves backwards in time. So this is an example now. This has been known about for a long time, way longer than 6 years ago. There's another image of it. So it goes back now. Last I checked, it had gone back to about 1920. But this time, just today, while I was checking, I can't even find the discovery date. Apparently, it's just always been known about since the volcano has been known about. So there's no discovery date. So it's definitely not 6 years ago. So now it is a Mandela because it is no longer new. It was a 2-year-old discovery 4 years ago, but now it's always been known. So the Mandela effect got Mandela'd. This is another one that changed for me about 4 years ago. This was a very small crater about the size of several people across, maybe 15 feet. And the story was that some miners were digging there and smelled gas. And so they wanted to burn off the gas, so they lit it on fire, and it never stopped burning. So the story now is that geologists lit this on fire in order to control the methane emissions. But before, the miners had hoped to mine, but now this has just always been a very large crater, and it actually was lit on fire in 1971, which is a lot further back than when I first learned of this. It's also a lot larger. You can see that these are people here. So it's grown about 10 times larger than when I first discovered this. It was more like a big ditch, like the size of a house maybe at the time. So I don't know if this one will keep growing, but it's called the Gates of Hell. So hopefully it doesn't. Let's just say. All right. This is another one that I first heard about 4 years ago, and it's pink lakes. I think this one's in Australia. At the time that I discovered it, there was only one of them, but there's quite a few supposedly scattered through the world now. It's supposed to be like colored algae that makes it pink. In my old timeline, we just didn't have all this colored algae that grew in the water. So water was just either dirty or muddy or clear, and that was about it. But in this timeline, we have all these beautiful colors that can come from the algae. This is another example of one, again, another Mandela. So what I'm kind of seeing very commonly is these things start out small, like little Mandela seeds, and they grow. So when you see something that's really cool but small, keep an eye on it because it gets larger and larger. This is an example of that. This is Grand Prismatic Springs in Yellowstone. When I first heard of these, it was just like a mud puddle that had orange algae that fed off the gases and the weird minerals here, and it just kept growing and growing, and then it got the blue-green in the middle. It was at first it was only the orange and yellow. Now you can see the size of it. It's like that. The Gates of Hell. It's gotten huge. These are people here, and this is a little walkway. So it's about from puddle size to this size. In the last maybe 9 years. So I learned of this maybe just a few years before I learned of the Mandela effect. And I immediately suspected it of being a Mandela because I had not remembered the orange mud going back, way back. So I've been watching it, and yes, it's growing and growing. So another sneaky thing that the Mandela likes to do, start small and then grow. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about animals. This is kind of a controversial topic because people say, well, maybe you just didn't know about these. And I can feel sympathetic to that. But the thing is that about 4 years ago, I started watching for all the weird animals I could find. And the ones that I found, I started watching them. And what I've seen is that after I discovered them, they continue to change. So this gelada baboon is an example of one. Did not originally have this triangle cutout of red skin, and its face has gotten a lot more expressive. The hair's gotten bigger since I first learned of it. It was weird looking before, but not nearly as weird as it is now. So this is one of the earlier ones that I noticed 4 years ago. Okay, so another pattern I'm seeing a great deal with the animals is species that used to just be one animal are splitting into multiple species. And the rhinos are a really good example because before there was just one rhino for me that had one horn on the nose, just the one. And then somebody else noticed that they started having two horns. I started watching them. And eventually now they've split into these 5 species that are quite different. Some have one horn, some have two. Well, I think one of these has one horn in here. Let's see if I can find it on the next one. This guy is the only one now that has one horn. All the rest have 2 horns. So these probably will continue to split. I've noticed that they'll split into 2 or 3, then there's 5 or 6. There'll be 2 or 3 with like a couple subspecies, and then the subspecies will become species, all within the course of like 6 months to a year. Here's another example of one that's split. There used to just be one kind of giraffe. The pattern was a lot like this one here. Maybe a combo of that one plus that one was the old patterns. And I started to see that there became more and more variation in the spot patterns. And eventually I figured out that they had split into at least 5 species. There's That kind of varies according to who's counting, but I definitely saw these changes. So you start to see more variation in an animal. Look and see if the species have split into multiple species. This is a very good example here. Okay, so there's another pattern that I'm seeing very strongly with these creatures is a very strong tendency towards either glow-in-the-dark bioluminescence or iridescence. And so this is an example of, these are actually worms. You think this might be underwater, but it's not. These are caves, terrestrial caves above water. And they're worms, slimy, gross worms that dangle down from the ceiling of these caves, and they are bioluminescent. So they actually light the caves. Just crazy. I saw these a few years ago, but they were just a few little dangles and you could barely see them. But it looks like it's heading towards that these will light the whole cave, or they're working on it. Here's another example of a whole bunch of them and a couple people in the cave. I think there's more than one of these caves now, too. So, yeah, it definitely would be fun to visit these. There's more glow in the dark. These are actual mushrooms. They're natural. They're not bioengineered. And they glow in the dark, bioluminescence. So many things have bioluminescence. When I first heard of those, it was just deep sea creatures, and that, well, we never knew about. The story was they had never gone down that deep, and they were discovering all these bioluminescent creatures. But now they're saying that like approximately 70% of the ocean fish, including the ones near the surface, are bioluminescent. So that's a whole different storyline. It used to just be the deep sea creatures. And then it became some mushrooms. There's beetles. A lot of different things now are bioluminescent. Here's another example. These are bioluminescent bacteria that when jostled will make bright light. And so now there's beaches all over the world that have these beautiful bright lights during some or all seasons. And this is a huge one for me because maybe 10 or 15 years ago, they advertised locally in my area of California that for the first ever time we were going to have this phenomenon. It was extremely rare. And we went and saw it, and it was just, it was a lot like this. It was amazing. And I thought it would be a once in a lifetime experience, because it had never come to our location ever. And then last time I checked, lo and behold, we are supposedly have these every year now. So they're kind of erratic in intensity, but every year in the summer season for these now, and we always have. So that kind of blew my mind. Most of the locals don't even know that we always have this. Even people that were born here don't know. They're shocked. So very interesting. Another beautiful light show, Mandela. I think we're just going to see more of these beautiful light shows as time goes on. Okay, so not everything is fun and games in the Mandela effect universe. And another change that I'm seeing a great deal of is herbivores have become like omnivores, or they have a taste for meat. And so all the herbivores I'm seeing, they're now saying that they'll eat meat. Now, the old storyline was that they didn't like it. They wouldn't touch it. Their stomachs weren't designed, their digestion couldn't tolerate meat because they were designed to be herbivores. But the last 2 years, there's just been a huge influx of just every animal you can imagine that was an herbivore has a taste for meat. So here we have giraffe chomping this live bird. And giraffes are now known to eat carcasses and chew on the bones. The storyline is it's for minerals. But I mean, they're eating live animals too. Rabbits are cannibals, and they eat other meat. And there's cannibal horses. If horses are hungry, they can eat fish, or they can eat roadkill or other dead horses. Here's a cow that just caught and ate this rabbit. So horses also, they can catch birds, rabbits, rodents. They'll eat them if they see even if they're not hungry specifically, and they have plenty of greens. If they see a rodent now, they will bite it. And there's a lot of video on these too. A lot smarter. Okay, so now let's just talk about the absurdity of some of the Mandela effects. You ever feel like the Mandela is trolling you? You ever feel like some of these are just too ridiculous? It's like a giant joke. So here's an example. Several years ago, I've heard about these purple squirrels that were found in several locations. They actually had purple fur. There's actually some video of them. And then they said, oh, well, maybe they got into purple paint. But, you know, the fur is not matted. This is not what would happen if you tried to paint fur purple. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens with the storyline, because it's obviously not paint. But so purple squirrel is kind of a joke for like the impossible candidate. If you're looking for an employee, they would say the purple squirrel is like when you've made the requirements so ridiculous that no candidate will ever fulfill your desires. That would be the purple squirrel. It's an impossible wish, but that's why this is such a troll, because it's impossible, and yet we found the purple squirrel. In fact, several of them have been found. Another example, kind of absurd, ridiculous things. Butterflies were always considered such a beautiful, pristine creature in the past for me, because they only ate nectar. So they were beautiful, and they only ate sugar nectar, and that was it. But in the current timeline, they are attracted to dog poop, carrion, blood, and all kinds of unsavory things. So that is probably not one of my favorite Mandela effects, because it's sort of gross. Some of the new animals do, unfortunately, trend in that direction. Okay, more absurdity. I find this one a particularly hard trolling of the reality, because Easter Island statues were always famous for being heads, just these giant heads without bodies, and they were bald. So you had these giant bald heads, and everybody knew about it. And slowly they grew these bodies, and for a while they said, "Oh, well, the bodies were buried, so nobody knew about them." An archaeologist would not notice that there were bodies under the head. It was a kind of a ridiculous excuse. So then they had bodies, and then they got these weird hat things, and then the hat things got bigger and bigger, and then they started saying the hats were actually like tied up hair, like hair knots. So when you think about it, what has happened now is over time, the last 5 or 6 years, these giant bald heads have turned into heads with hair on them, giant, tons of hair and bodies. So that's why I consider this kind of a giant trolling. It looks like the sun is kind of getting me, so I'm going to try to turn a little bit here to get out of the sun. I don't think it's working though. There might be no escape from the sun. All right, so this one recently found by someone on Retconned subreddit. Apparently now pelicans, when they need to stretch, find it pleasurable or cooling or relaxing to push their spine out of their lower mouth. So that's their spine. That's his spine right there. And I guess they like it. It's absolutely ridiculous. I can't imagine that nobody would know about this. But, looking online, there are very few photos of this. You would think that this supposedly commonly occurring event everybody should be taking pictures of this ridiculousness. So there's the bottom beak and the top beak, and then this is, I guess, throat material, and there's the spine. It's gross and ridiculous. So apparently your dear friend the shoebill, which is a very popularly considered a Mandela effect also. They're ridiculous. They've got these nictitating membranes that cover their eyes, so their eyes can look really creepy. They also now apparently do this spine pushing maneuver, so you can see them doing that. And there's another pelican doing it, even more so than the other one. You can kind of get more of an idea. There's only a few images of the shoebill doing it. That's why I wasn't able to get a very high quality photo. But I think that we will see more in the coming months. This is a very new discovery. And I've been looking at the shoebills, and I've never seen them do this before. So keep an eye on this. I think we're going to see more and more of this. Right now, I can only find these 2 birds that do it, and that's it. But we do also have that weird thing where sharks will actually barf out their stomachs and flap them around in the water to clean them. And then it was after the sharks were, the frogs will now do that also. So there seems to be this weird inside-outside pattern that I'm kind of seeing that's pretty gross. You definitely could not throw your stomach out and flap it around in the water before, just to clean it out. So yeah, the internal organs apparently are a lot more hardy here than they were in some past timelines. Another weird animal, Mary River turtle. This thing is ridiculous. So it's got this punk rock hair, which is actually algae that grows on its head. So in my past, you couldn't really have algae growing on your skin and still be alive. But in this timeline, I guess you can. And this turtle also breathes from his hindquarters. He's absolutely able to respirate and take air in and out from the nether regions. There's also a few other animals that can do that now. So just ridiculous again. It's like total trolling of anything you ever thought was possible pretty much can happen now, no matter how ridiculous it sounds. This timeline can make it so. So maybe it's a comment on our limits to, and maybe it's a comment on how much people can assume they didn't notice, no matter how ridiculous it may sound. Somehow they just forgot, apparently. Okay, so another, what I consider kind of a timeline trolling is now you have these animals that can be like female on one half and male on the other, like split down the middle. I kind of feel like a little kid invented this, but so this they call them gynandromorphs. They're half male and half female, split down the middle. So they're not hermaphrodites. They're actually split down the middle. So this is a cardinal, and you can tell it's half and half because the males and the females have different coloration. And so you can see the male color is the bright and the female is the not so bright. And there's a lot of gynandromorphs now in this timeline. This one is a little bit different than the gynandromorph. This is a chimera, which is even more weird in my opinion. And it's basically, they're saying that this cat is half one cat and half another cat. And there were like two embryos that fused in the womb and became like half and half. So it's like half its sister. It's split right down the middle, so these are totally different genetics. Supposedly humans can also be chimera, although I've yet to see one that has a straight division like that. I suspect it will come, because if it's come in the animals, there's no reason why it won't come in humans. And it does seem like things start in the animal kingdom, you get used to them, and then they come into the human kingdom. Now, granted, a lot of these I've never seen in real life. I've seen some of the Mandelas in real life, but not these. So, I mean, I guess you could say that it's all just online. But anyway, keep your eyes open. Here's another one. This is a half and half gynandromorph lobster. So it's like half male, half female, supposedly. I've heard different storylines for these half and halves. So maybe they're chimeras. Some people say they're gynandromorphs. The story keeps changing on those, so this is a little bit in a gray area, but they're half and half colorations. Okay, so this one, all right. I've talked before about fantasy making it into reality, and this is a classic example. So in the movie Frozen, which is a cartoon, there's these horses that have this weird mane coloration. And I've been watching the horses, and suddenly they've shown up now as being a real horse. They're called fjord horse. So this is a real horse. These horses have a black dorsal line, they're calling it. So the mane is black in the middle and then white on the outsides. So then they trim it. They can make this horse have this weird pattern. So this is not dyed. This is all natural. And they just trim the hair to expose the black center. And they do all different patterns. There's also ones like with hearts and stuff. So now these guys that were in the movie Frozen are now they're real creatures, at least according to the internet, that they always have been. Okay, so this is another example of things that first for me showed up like as a fantasy, or in this case it was a meme. For a while, some years ago, a meme went around where people were photoshopping human teeth into animals. And a big one I saw all the time was actually human teeth on fish. That was the first one that I saw, and then they started spreading it to everything. So that now here's one on like human teeth on a pug dog. There's ones on cats are pretty popular. Strangely, I'm not seeing the one that's on the human teeth on fish, but I think I know why, because that has now made it into the real world with these sheep's head fish. So now these sheep's head fish supposedly have teeth that look like human teeth. And at first it was just this row of them here. Now there's multiple rows of the teeth inside. That's kind of a more recent development. There's a lot of animals now that have multiple rows of teeth. It used to be just sharks for me that had the multiple rows. So again, keeps changing. Weird teeth all in the mouth, just insanity with teeth. Very strong pattern. I think we'll see more. I think we're just getting started. Okay, so another example of fantasy to reality. Talked a little bit about Pokemon. So a lot of the Pokemons in my old timeline, like 4 or 5 years ago, were pure fantasy creatures. But a lot of the creatures from the Pokemon Pokédex, the Pokemon universe, have actually shown up in reality. And one is this pangolin. Now, when this pangolin first showed for me a number of years ago, they were small creatures. And now they're really big. There's a whole bunch of kinds of them. They're very quite populous. Looking at the ear here, it looks like it's getting all spiral. That wasn't the case before. The claws have gotten a lot larger. These are very weird little animals. Well, big animals now. So it seems to be kind of a thing. There's other ones. This is a very striking one. I think this is called Poliwag. It's another one of the Pokemon creatures. So in the current timeline, it actually is modeled after a real creature, and that's these translucent tadpoles. Now you see this pattern in here. Not only is it a weird spiral, but supposedly these are this tadpole's intestines that are spiraling neatly around like this. So very, very weird. Not only are they translucent, but then they very conveniently have this amazing intestinal pattern. So again, another one that for me just kind of showed up from these Pokemon creatures. Okay, so another example of kind of this one's not actually a meme, but it's more like a viral image that a number of years ago, this shark that was a cyclops that just has one eye in the center was found. I think it was dead already, but it's a little embryo kind of thing and so this image went viral very quickly. And at that time, I already knew about the Mandela effects. So I actually hunted to see if there were any other cyclops creatures that I could find, and I couldn't. But I was very suspicious. So this is another one that I've been watching. And sure enough, in the last year or so, there's just all kinds of cyclops creatures. This is a cyclops baby goat. This one actually did live, so it's standing here. It's alive. There's a lot of goats now and a few other creatures that now survives. And there's actually a word for this. It's called cyclopia. When I first researched this, they did not have a word. So I think we're going to see more of this. You know, creatures of legend, cyclops creatures can now survive. I'm wondering if we'll get a species that perhaps has this as its normal shape. We're seeing there's so many weird things now. You know, we've got species that have no males and only, like lizards, that only reproduce by splitting. Like somehow the female is able to produce viable offspring without a male. The males apparently weren't needed anymore for the species. In my old timeline, they would say that the species would stagnate and die if they didn't have the mixing of the genetics. But in this timeline, it does not seem to be a problem at all. Genetics are a lot more flexible here. Okay, so those are the animals. Let's talk a little bit about humans, the human animal. So one of the most popular Mandela effects around is the location of the heart used to be on the left. This little bit of residual or residue, as they call it, shows what a lot of us remember. I also remember the rib cage being open in the center and not attaching. This guy kind of has it because that center attachment is smaller. Also, he has the black eyes that a lot of us don't remember there being bone back behind the eye. So it's a little bit of a residue. The hips are still weird, though, for me, but can't have everything. Okay, so some really weird anatomy ones. I don't think this has been covered by many people, but so supposedly now the story is that humans have these kind of like patterns on their body that are hard to see, but supposedly if you put a black light on, you can see these patterns in your body. Now what's weird is that I could not find any images of a black light showing these online. You would think that if you could see these with a black light, that people would be looking for them and put it online. I don't have a black light, but if any of you do, see if you can see any of these weird patterns. So it varies by person. So basically, these are like patterns similar to what animals have, but they're just kind of hidden. This is a very weird storyline. I think we're going to see a lot more come out of this. And so each person has a little bit unique patterns, and these are common patterns in here. I mean, like, look at the checkerboard, really? Checkerboard pattern is supposed to be natural. This is like down the middle, kind of like those half and halves. This is like a tiger stripes. This is like almost spotted. Very weird. So the story now is that if you have any skin conditions, it'll show up these patterns. So this is supposed to be, the pattern is called Blaschko lines. And so apparently, supposedly these have been known about a really long time. And you can develop, if you have any skin conditions, they'll develop along these patterns. So what we're seeing is more and more actual weird skin condition type things. And one that's really common now, at least online, is this vitiligo thing. And so you just have like these depigmentation of the skin. But see, notice how it's symmetrical, mostly symmetrical across the face. And that's what's been getting me for the last 2-3 years is I've noticed that it's very symmetrical. It used to just be weird patches, and now a lot of the ones you see are symmetrical. So this is supposed to be a model that has the vitiligo. So it's starting to look more and more like animal coloration because it's symmetrical. And they're saying that these lines that we have are similar to the animal pattern lines, which I've certainly never heard of until the last year or so. So speaking of memes, and this is one I've been thinking about for years, the zombie apocalypse meme. What does it mean for humanity? Why did it become so popular? Why did it come out of nowhere like that? I've thought about this even before the Mandela effect was something that I knew about. And afterwards, when I started seeing all those creatures first start as memes or fantasy creatures and then come into reality. So what does this mean? And maybe it'll mean different things for different people. You know, for the Bible people, maybe it means the strong delusion. For non-Bible people, maybe it means brainwashed by the television or addicted to materialism. There's so many options. So I think that that's going to be one of our challenges now as we see sociology and the economy and everything just acting so strange is, what does it mean? What does it mean for our future? And how do we control or change things for the better? I mean, if you think about fantasy and imagination, what do we put back into the world and how does it come back out in reality? So I think that's something that we all have to think about. And I know that a lot of other speakers will be covering that topic, but I think that from what we're seeing, that there's different ways that the zombie apocalypse might manifest, and maybe some of these ways can be reversed if we put our minds to it. So I've done a lot of observing old Mandela effects, and I've done a lot of observing patterns of where it might go. But in the end, the ultimate question is, how do we as a people make it go in a better direction? So at least keep that in mind for the future, and thank you so much.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Q&A for Miss Eva Nye. What a great presentation, Eva. It was just like watching your show. I felt like I was right back in the middle of the night watching another episode of Once Upon a Timeline. Absolutely great. Thank you, Miss Eva.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to say that, yeah, that was a perfect reason why I love watching your channel, because I never cease
to... Try that one more time. We went a little bit of feed or a little bit of a break up there.
For me? I'll go to.
Is it for me?
Oh, it might just be you, actually.
Hold on, let me just check. It could be me. Wait a second.
No, you're coming through really clear, and he's not. We'll just continue on for now.
That was me. My bad. Apologies.
All right. So yeah, so it's wonderful because you always blow my mind with some of the stuff going on, and some of them seem pretty ridiculous, don't they?
Yep, definitely. It continually blows my mind. 4 years ago, we were just talking about spelling changes, and we thought that South America was the weirdest, but it just gets weirder and weirder, and politics and everything else following suit.
Excellent. So let's see. We've already got some questions. It actually started during the premiere earlier from your, which I loved. That anybody who missed the interview before the conference today, please go check it out, because that was awesome too. What a great discussion earlier. Okay, so Jen's Gems asked a question: if consciousness is here to express itself in multiple simultaneous ways, isn't agreement on collective memories a way to funnel us into one, thus more controllable?
Agreement on collective memories? I'm not sure I really understand that question. Are we talking about just discussing the Mandela effects and agreeing on them? Or are we talking about in order for something to show up, it has to be agreed upon by everybody? I suspect the latter is likely true, but I don't know, it might get complicated, because it does seem like sometimes you see things yourself and you point people to them, like, okay, look at this website. And it's like they see something completely different sometimes. So I don't know if they're actually kind of in a slightly different timeline, or they're just not able to perceive the exact same things we see. So we kind of assume that when I'm looking something on the internet, I see the exact same thing that everybody else does, but I know I'm no longer sure of that, especially lately. There just seems to be times when people just can't observe the exact same thing that I'm seeing. So I don't know. And I'm not sure about, I'm not even sure if I understand the question, but that's how I'm answering it.
That's perfect, because I don't know how to clarify it. But it did come during it came out during your, like I said, the premiere. So it could have been, you guys talked a little bit about other stuff during that. So this one from Overprotected Sherry, who says, spell orangutan now, and it's quite different. Have you noticed that one, or is that a change for you?
Oh, yeah, originally for me, it was orangutan, but it has, and it's an older Mandela for me, but it changed to orangutan.
Yeah,
so
right.
There's no G. Yeah, but that one actually was one I'd noticed before I even knew about the Mandela, maybe like 10 years ago. And I just, I must have remembered it wrong. I think I thought that there was more than one spelling, and I had just not seen that other one. But after I learned about the Mandela, I'm like, it has Mandela written all over it.
It sure does. And, you're making me realize that I noticed it a really long time ago. And one of the cool things about the way she remembered this is because she said when she was a little girl, you remember the drink Tang. She would remember it was orange Tang. So You spell it like orange Tang. And so now it's nothing like that, orangutan or something. And it's quite different than I remember. What about you, Jerry? Do you remember that one? Tang or a tan? Actually, you're muted. Not in Zoom on the mic. His mic might not be working.
Okay. Well,
Sorry.
I also remember similar that I thought of that because I was a big Tangaholic when I was a kid. And it seemed like they were more orange colored back then. It seems like they've kind of lost some of their oranginess as well. Yeah.
If you have a USB mic, you might try just unplugging it and plugging it back in. That usually helps with mine. Okay, next question. Once upon a time, and you might have answered this in the chat, but Sherry was asking if there's a place with all of these light up beaches and pink lakes and light up mushrooms, because I think it looks a lot like Pandora. We were kind of commenting in the chat.
Pandora, was it the what is that movie
from Avatar?
Avatar, yeah. Okay, yeah. It does look like a lot like that. You do have to wonder how much some of these movies became very popular, and now we're seeing similar things.
Right, so, just like you were saying, it totally ties in with what you were saying, where you've got this horse in Frozen, and now here it is in real life.
That horse was not here for me. I mean, it does seem that some people just, I call it like coming from a timeline closer to the current one than I do, because it seems to work on sort of a continuum where some people see a lot of MEs, and then some people just see a middling number, and then some just see little bitty changes. And so it's like, for some people, maybe the narwhal was always here, and for others it wasn't. So I think some people just assume that all the Mandelas if they don't see that specific Mandela effect, then it can't be a Mandela effect, but it doesn't really work like that. It exists on a continuum.
Yeah, it sure doesn't work that way. And you learn that after talking to so many people, because you'll realize that everyone's got sort of their own list of what they're affected and how they remember things. So it's very dynamic and individual.
There's a couple of them that are like huge in the community, and I don't see them. And so it's not cut and dried, even though I see a lot of them. There's still a few, like Tiananmen Square, Tank Man for me didn't get killed. And I know that's very
same
popular.
Here. Same for me. No, I remember it just as it is.
Mm-hmm. I don't actually remember it just as it is, though. I actually remember him like doing the stop motion with his hand and not having the grocery bags. And there are others that remember like that too.
Yeah, I think I remember him doing it. I thought that was just earlier in the clip. Is it not?
No, he doesn't do the stop motion anymore.
I remember him doing that. Yeah. And then I just thought I was seeing more of the clip than I'd seen before, maybe, because but I definitely remember that.
Yeah, for me, he did the stop motion, and then they drug him away, but he didn't climb all over the tank originally.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was new for me too. I was thinking it just cut off before that. So it's so funny how the brain tries to justify why things are different, and you were talking about that earlier too, because you can feel this internal struggle for your brain to just try to just make things normal, when they don't appear to be. You're good.
Like rationalizing. Rationalizing in the beginning, I did that a lot. We rationalized, like Jiffy was my big rationalization. I remember the first time I picked that up and went, that was a goofy logo change, and went on with my day.
Yeah, and it's not tough. It's not tough for the brain, because like with cartoons, for instance, when I noticed the Looney Tune change, I remember making that clever connection between Looney Tune and cartoon. So the way my brain justified it is, well, I was a little kid. Maybe I spelled cartoon CarTune, and I just, you know what I mean? So even though I remembered it being TOON, it's just the brain just puts that little bit of doubt in there where you can't be 100%. So that's why it took me like a year to really be affected, to really know, oh my gosh, things are really changing. Okay, so let me see if
I got a question.
Okay.
Eva was answering a couple of these in chat, but have you ever heard of the zombie fires in Alaska, Eva? And what are your thoughts on it?
I had not heard of them until the chat, and I just looked it up. And it's pretty bizarre, because they're basically saying that in Antarctica, the fires that got started never went out. And I'm like, isn't it freaking cold up there? I mean, right? That's pretty bizarre. So, I mean, if they're going to be zombie fires in Antarctica, then there's going to be zombie fires everywhere. Yet, I mean, I live in kind of a fire region in Southern California. And we do have problems with smoldering embers. And so they watch very carefully for like a week after a big fire goes through to make sure all those embers are out. Because, you know, charcoal, a really big piece of charcoal can smolder for quite some time, especially if there's a lot of debris on top of it. But just for like a week, you know, or days, and it's not months. That's crazy. That's just insane. I'm very curious to see what kind of a storyline excuse they come up with. But on the flip side, it's a little disturbing because if it can happen there, I mean, where else can it happen? Everywhere, unless they come up with a weird story for like how, you know, this might be one of those bizarre Mandelas where they say it's so cold that the fire can last longer or something. They may come up with something like that. Some opposite, like ridiculous sounding things. I wouldn't be
So
surprised.
hot that it creates ice, right?
Yeah. I've covered some stuff like that. Yeah, I know. It's like what was it? Mercury is so close to the sun that the heat from the sun makes it more prone to ice. That it's crazy.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
I gotta say that one didn't make sense to me either. I called shenanigans on that one.
Yeah, I was going to include that, but my show was just getting way too long, so it got cut. I'm pretty sure that one was one that got cut.
Shane, do you have a question over there, bud?
Yeah, we got one from Imaginationary Man. Could the womb of animals and humans be an intersection between dimensions or timelines where two avatars from different timelines can merge? Some say Earth is a womb and we are waiting to be born. And this kind of ties into the Mandela effect that scriptures that used to say womb and now they say matrix, I think. I just thought I'd bring that up too.
I think it just depends on how you think about it. I just think I tend to be more on that this is kind of like reality itself is sort of like a dream or a simulation. And I don't mean it like somewhere there's a computer and we're all on it, but it has more of that nature where it's just very changeable. The storylines can be altered going even into the past. And so in that way, I don't really think of like the womb being any different than the rest of reality, the rest of the human, as I don't think of it having as having a special nature versus all the rest of the weird reality. Me personally, I think it just depends on how you think of what is a womb and the nature of it and the nature of reality. So that's going to be a highly individual set of opinions.
Absolutely.
So I have one for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one that I've been curious about myself. So I've made no two ways about it. I love watching Eva's show. I watch it every week. I'm a moderator over there. I absolutely love it. But one thing you bring up is these animals. All the time you're bringing up these odd animals. My goodness, you find some of the most interesting ones, I will say, to put it nicely. But these ones that are eating meat, these ones that are suddenly eating, they should be vegetarians. Are we noticing any like tooth changes or physicality changes to match the fact they're eating meat now?
Okay, so for that one, a lot of animals, I was not super familiar with their teeth structure. So I can't really answer for like, say, giraffes. There's definitely been some people who have covered, and I actually covered after they covered it. The hippopotamus teeth now have these weird, large teeth that stick straight out. I don't remember that being the case. And there are some animals that I did know the teeth structure for. And one of those is coyotes. And those teeth have very much changed. So they used to have, and this kind of goes opposites from what we're seeing, but coyotes are technically omnivores, and I sell the teeth. Like I get scrap teeth from other sources, and I sell online. So I see these teeth for years. For 11 years now, I've been selling coyote teeth, and they're changing. And one thing that's happening is the roots have gotten a lot longer on them. They're very long now. Another thing that's happened is they used to actually be more omnivorous looking. They had a lot of the flat molars in the back. And a lot of those molars started to, first one about here switched so it was like half flat and then kind of pointy on the side. And then the next one switched to be half flat and then pointy on the side. And then the first one became completely pointy. And so it's been going back through the jawline where there's only like one flat one back here now, and then one that's like half flat and half pointy. And there used to be a whole bunch of flat molars along there, like half. So those teeth structure have changed. So they're getting, their teeth are getting more carnivorous looking for coyotes. I haven't noticed a change in coyote diet, but they were always omnivores. So, the problem is I wasn't not intensely familiar with the teeth structure of many animals, but coyotes were one. There's also been some weird sinus changes in a lot of the smaller animals. But I don't see skulls and teeth of the exotic endangered animals, since those are protected. So I can't really answer on those.
Understood. Shane, you got one over there, Bubba?
Well, just kind of a follow-up to that. Any idea of why we see these animals? Because we have changes that seem so, cool and positive and bright, and then other ones that, some people would see that as a negative. I guess it doesn't seem to be just, exclusive in it. It seems to affect everything. But what's your thoughts on it? What becoming meat eaters with animals? Do you have any thoughts with that?
I've thought about this because from a cultural perspective, in the way humans think of animals, it's creepy. We're used to thinking of rabbits as these cute little sweet, fuzzy, innocent vegetarian creatures. And now they rear up and fight. They didn't used to do that. That was a few years ago, and they're eating dead animals and stuff. And my old timeline, they just that was actually one of the arguments that where something's bandied around, is that you naturally have a taste for what is your native foods, that's your natural foods. And rabbits would never eat meat because their intestines weren't designed for it, and they didn't have a taste for it. So I'm guessing that it's basically just that some of these animals are much more flexible now. We've seen a lot of anatomy changes in humans. There's also been some in animals. I noticed some changes. I don't know the animals as well as I knew humans, but so maybe it's just that they're more survivors now. They can eat whatever. The digestion's changed so that we can eat more things, would be my guess. I'm still not sure. Sometimes I'm just watching to see what happens as well, like everybody else.
I love that from a very naturalistic point of view. It's actually an improvement for them, at least, that they can eat more things, right?
Yeah, and live in more environments.
That we're seeing these animal changes not only in ourselves but across the entire animal kingdom. Are you seeing this too, Eva?
The biological changes are happening on every animal that I have knowledge of. Some like sharks have grown. Sharks. There's so many weird kinds now, but also some of the old sharks have poison spines. They have new capabilities. I apologize. I'm going to finish this one. I'm going to let my cat out because, of course, he decided to flip out, and you can hear him meowing out back there.
To speak of animals.
Speaking of the beast. Yeah, speaking of the beast, his coat has changed a lot. I also noticed his coloration has changed. He used to be a mute tabby, but his back turned very solid colored, and his underside has turned very light colored. And he's gotten some stripes, some like one on each arm, big stripes. They look like he's wearing upper arm bracelets now. Wow. And his stripy stripes are breaking up into being more spotted. So he's changed a lot. And then my dog that I had before, who has passed on, but I did have her after I knew the Mandela, her back, you could feel those humans have gotten those weird spines along the backbone vertebrae, and she got those also. And I was feeling her back one day, and I'm like, wow, her back is so bony. I was afraid she had lost weight because I could feel so many bones, and she was an older dog, so you watch for that. But I weighed her, and her weight was exactly normal. She had not lost a single pound. And there had been some other things I had felt on her hips that were sticking out. And I think those were anatomy changes inside her. And another really weird thing that happened with her was when she was younger, she had gotten a little bit hit by a car. I mean, she didn't get the car was only going like 5 miles an hour, and she ran out in front of it, and because she saw a rabbit or something, and kind of gotten boomed a little, but and she kind of got thrown a little, but then she just kind of whined a little, and then she was fine. So I never took her to the vet because it wasn't that hard to hit, and she seemed totally fine. And for years there was never any sign of that, but then suddenly she got this weird. If you felt her sides, you could feel that a bone was sticking out in a weird place, but there was no bruising or damage. It didn't hurt her. And it was the exact spot where she had gotten hit by that car. And I've wondered if, since her rib cage seemed to have changed and covered more of her abdomen, similar to how humans have happened in the old timeline, I'm wondering if that rib either was stronger and didn't bend, and now we have this more meshed ribs, and did have some damage from that hit. All right, I'm going to let the cat out. I'll be back in like 10 seconds.
Yes, ma'am. Shane, have you ever had any animals that have had any changes like that, or you seen anything in your surrounding reality?
No, man. In fact, I'm like the opposite of Eva, where she is so great at.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. I was just saying, like, I'm the opposite of you, where I'm not very good at noticing little details over and over, changing like that. And it's really a gift that you have, because I really admire seeing you really notice, time after time, like the picture behind you when you're, well, I don't know if it's there now, but I've seen you in the live stream where you're noticing little changes.
Right there. Yep.
It's being observant and to see that one transform over time, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of remember that. And it's really cool to see all of that. And you're really a treasure to the community with the way that you're able to see these things, because it's not like that for me. Is it like that for you, Jerry?
No, I don't. Now, I feel bad sometimes because I don't see them like a lot of people do. Like if somebody puts up a video and says, "Hey, is this changed?" Yeah, of course. But like walking through my local town or going out here for a walk in the woods, I don't see it like that. I really don't. I don't notice when there's a subtle change. For me, it takes more of a the whole room changing color, for instance. Like, it's got to be something very blatant in your face. Me, oh wow, something's not right.
Right, but sometimes it's like almost intuitive or right brain that you sense something. Right, it's almost like,
yeah, I really don't.
It's like, this feels different, and it could be the house is a different color, but that's just how I am about something. And if it has a different feeling to it, I'll notice it.
The whole room changing color. Gotcha.
So
how's it going, Chris?
So I think the thing is, though, basically, there's all different kinds of humans, right? So everybody has a little bit different skill sets. So it actually makes sense that everybody, like Shane, you obviously, and also Dark Wolf, are amazing at moderating and leading things and having a really nice, smooth interview and complimenting people and making them feel comfortable. So everybody has these different skill sets. If we all had the same one, that would just not be very efficient, would it? It's like we kind of specialize in what we can do. So that's my little niche, and you guys do your little niches, and each other channel has it. So I just think it all together, we cover it better that way. So
that's so funny you said that, because I felt like the Mandela effect has really, because it's such a subjective experience, and you have to sort of consider other people if you really want to kind of get at what's going on, because nobody really knows. Nobody here is saying they know for sure, So we're all sort of coming to the table, and we're all bringing our different gifts, like you're saying, and we really, the more open-minded we are, and the more we consider other people's points of view, the more we're really broadening our perspective and really maybe getting at what's going on. Right. So I think it's really important that we appreciate the diversity of views of what people think is going on, because with every idea, there's some growth within, as long as we don't get too triggered by it. Right.
Yep.
All right, guys, on that note, you know what I don't like about these panel discussions is that they go way too quickly. Can you guys believe we are out of time for the Q&A already? This has been amazing. I've got 90 more questions that I would love to ask you, Eva. Of course, we don't have the time to do it.
Jerry, you have 10 more minutes. She has 10 more minutes. You have time for a couple more questions.
I stand corrected. Thank you, tech team. We appreciate that. We got the tech team on our back, ladies and gentlemen. So My apologies.
Yeah, let's let Chris
Go
jump in
ahead,
here.
Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, Eva, like, I really enjoyed your presentation dramatically. You had so many thought-provoking, interesting things, one after the other. Boom, 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 boom. It was great. So I just wanted to, I loved interviewing you, and I thought you did a really good job with that. So I just wanted to jump in and say that. So yeah, thank you.
You know, a lot of that stuff, it's just been years, and it's just, I've just taken material from years of covering the Mandela. So it's not like I thought of that all in 1 minute, you know. It's
And I like how you said too, like, whatever you're talking about, like, it might change. So, you know, if you go back and check it, then things can change back to the way they are or whatever the situation is. And that's true. That's the way it seems to work sometimes.
Yeah, if a new animal shows up, and if they say it's nearly extinct and it's very bizarre, keep a sharp eye on that one, because those are the ones that are, I'm kind of, when they're newly showed up, they change most rapidly in my experience. And then if you check a year later, they won't be nearly extinct. They'll be just endangered, or then they'll be threatened. It's like they go backwards from what the media says. Media says they're nearly extinct. And from my perspective, what's happening is they just showed up, and there'll be more of them later. So it's kind of a weird backwards system that they seem to be going in.
Yeah, the animals, and then the phenomena in the atmosphere, like the sundog image that you showed, was like really dramatic. What's going on with the moon bows, all that stuff is really fascinating.
Yeah, and it starts out with just one. Like at first, the sundog was just a circle around the sun, and then it expands out. So keep an eye on it. I'm sure that we'll see more and more weird sky phenomena. And there's always a scientific explanation for them too. So that's kind of hilarious. Some of them are very bizarre too. Ice crystals reflecting light seems to be the big favorite in the last few years.
Interesting. And how the ice cubes can make a formation above it in your freezer sometimes. Mm-hmm. I'm going to look out for that one.
There's a whole bunch of weird ice phenomena now, like the snow rollers, and there's like 15 different weird ice things. I just couldn't cover them all, so I just had to pick one.
Yeah, Eileen had actually brought up that ice one with the ice growing out the top of her ice trays. Eileen, the co-host.
Oh, she saw it. Okay.
Yeah, she's actually experienced it and was wondering about it or whatever. So that's interesting. Yeah, because none of us had ever heard of it either. Yeah.
That's a really old one for me. I covered it a few years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while since she talked about it too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Weird one though. Yeah.
So Fizzy Pop asked, and again, I'm sorry to bring it back to the animals. I know you covered so much stuff, but the animals seem to be the theme here on this one. You've covered a lot of mandanimals, from very tiny insects, things that I kind of get creeped out by a lot, up to the cuter things. So what is your favorite mandanimal?
I think it would probably just be narwhals, because it was one of the first ones. And it is an older one, and it is so ridiculous that they have like 8-foot spikes on their head, and they're an ocean-going creature that it's, you know, it doesn't even seem like, how can you even eat with that thing on your head? And it's also one that I saw and was marveling at before I knew about the Mandela effect. I heard about those, and I'm like, how could I not know about this? Is totally bizarre. And I actually have long tracked weird animals. So, you know, so that's got to be my favorite. I don't think it's the cutest one, but it's the one that sticks in my head right away.
Gotcha. And I don't want to miss any questions here, because we are running short on time for real. Let me see here. One more. Do you think the Earth, that there is an expansion and contraction of the continents that move them from a Pangea state, then back to Pangea state, like the Earth and or heart taking a breath, Hindu type of idea?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that the Japanese have a lot of that kind of the concept of a cycling of eras and times that is similar to the in-out breath. And I've heard that from a number of sources. I'm really not sure on Earth. It does kind of seem like way back, the concept of Pangea for me was just a theory and kind of a new agey, wacky one at that time. It was considered. There was no evidence for it. And then I've seen that they actually started teaching it in school, and now it's accepted. And it does very much look like the continents are squishing into what would be like a Pangea. So, the science is saying it's the opposite, that we're spreading out. But again, it is like the animals. What I see with my eyes is opposite of what the science is claiming is happening. So it could be, as far as the, I have also researched quite some time ago the concept of the expanding Earth model, perhaps explaining some of the weird anomalies. But again, since I'm kind of into the dream sim thing, I think maybe it just depends on what timeline you're in and which direction you go for some of this stuff.
Yeah, I was noticing how the way you were viewing things was totally how I was. And I even maybe would add the game element, not to sort of cheapen the experience, but, to make it more fun, because, you can, I've done that my whole life. You get a crappy job, but you can like make a game out of it, like maybe outwork everybody else or whatever it is. And, and that really makes people angry too. You're not really doing it to be the best. You're just trying to, make it through the day. But yeah, just the whole game idea, the simulation idea. What do you think about that? Like more like a learning experience.
Yeah, I definitely do think that multiple of these can be true on different levels. I think that probably it's something that it's hard to really wrap your brain around because it's so complicated. But I've definitely noticed that just in life, and even before I knew about the Mandela effect, you get a job, you hate it, but then if you change your mindset, then things change at the workplace too, and things can stop bothering you. And I've actually seen people get I had a job where the boss was really mean, and he was just very hard to work for. And I saw people kind of evolve through that job where they learned how to just, I'm not listening to any baloney. I'm just going to do my job. And it was interesting because it seemed like people would reach a certain level where they learned their lesson in that job, and then suddenly they'd find another great job and they were out of there. It was almost like that job itself was a learning process. Yeah. And it wasn't learning to handle customers. It was learning to handle the boss. And once you learned your lesson, reality would cut you loose from that job. You didn't have to have it anymore. And the same thing happened with myself. I got to a certain point, and then I got a new opportunity that kind of fell in my lap. And that's what I'm doing now. So I think that Earth might be like that also. And I've had a lot of dreams like that, you come here to learn certain things. And, there's a lot of traditions that say the same. So I think it's likely. I can never say for sure, I know for sure, but my feeling that is likely.
Well, I really want to thank you. You are such an asset to the community with your ability to look at these things and to keep everybody informed with it. And I thank you so much for what you bring.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And I second what Shane said. Absolutely wonderful. Great show last night. Guys who don't know, go over to Once Upon a Timeline. Amazing shows every week, the exact same time. She's very consistent on her schedule, which is always a good thing for YouTube because there ain't a lot of that on YouTube. So, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Eva Nye, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Eva.